Brandin Cooks absolutely dominated the first padded practice for the Cowboys. What does that mean for this offense moving forward? All that more this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first and now your second listen of the day, now that we're doing 2 episodes. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, you just got back from the Dallas Cowboys' first padded practice of the year. What was your biggest takeaway from that practice?
They were ready for the pads today, man. You could hear it as when they started, progressing through the different drills. They always start out kind of using, doing special team stuff and then kind of doing some individual stuff while, certain folks are over doing kicking stuff. They've got, some of the star players that don't play special teams working on individual stuff. But you could hear it, like as they started blowing the horns through the different periods. They started getting into the 7-on-7. They started to get into the 9-on-7. People were hooping and hollering, just getting into the drills. So, and it was a very spirited practice. So, so that's the main takeaway. Honestly.
Yeah, this feels like the first actual practice of training camp. All that stuff without pads doesn't really matter. This is what matters. And I gotta say, one of the biggest winners of this practice had to be Brandin Cooks. I mean, Dak Prescott and him have just this amazing connection. And I was actually telling you before we jumped on the show, watching today's practice. Maybe kind of wish the Cowboys traded for Brandin Cooks at the trade deadline last year, because I wonder how far they would have gone with him, because he's exactly what this offense needed.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, I heard someone talk, I think it was Curse after practice, is that it's you can't really anticipate his speed. He's so quick, he's so fast. He gets through the defense really quickly. And Dak and him have clearly had a connection. He was able to find him, in that kind of over route deep. He's just, they've already had a very clean connection on a couple of different practices. I mean, so far, each one of the practices I've been to the last 2 days, there's been at least one huge 35+ long touchdown to Cooks, during a competitive period, not like just against air. So they're clearly working on this. I think the thing that what we're seeing a lot more, and it's not even just with Cooks, but with all these receivers, is that they're getting the ball on the move. They're getting, they're still kind of working through getting the final touches of the accuracy down, so that people are kind of catching it in stride. But if you're just looking at the routes that they're throwing to, guys are getting the ball in their outstretched hands as they're moving across the field, as opposed to coming to a complete stop, coming back to the quarterback, and then catching the pass and then falling down without any yak. So I think that's the main kind of schematic takeaway I had from this, is that plus the play action. They were really, really working a lot of play action with the run game today. Was really exciting to see.
Brandin Cooks is just a perfect fit for Dak, right? He gets open all the time. He makes plays down the field. There was even a route I saw in, I think it was 7-on-7s, where he threw a slant to Brandin Cooks, who's kind of stopped on a dime and then turned back up the field the other way. That's the kind of things they've been needing outside of CeeDee Lamb. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and you're even seeing Gallup making, coming back to form too. You saw him make some plays down the sideline. Tolbert is, again, we're talking about the drumbeat. Tolbert had another really, really good practice. And actually, someone just asked, I was just reading this from Johnny Martinez. Thanks for popping that in. How does Simi look compared to Tolbert? I didn't notice Simi at practice, but I noticed Tolbert several different times. I went back and watched some of the video that I took at practice and kind of dove in a little bit deeper, and I noticed Simeon on this one really great play action bootleg where he's coming across the field. He's going to be really fantastic in those kind of situations, the kind of play action crossers where you got a slow wide receiver as like the second level dragger across the field, because he's such a big body that he presents such a great target for Dak as he's kind of rolling across the field. So apparently, from what I saw, from what I heard, he also had 2 other catches that were really nice. Honestly, I think you have to say that the wide receivers as a group, frankly, had a great day today overall.
Especially when you compare that to what we had at this time last year at camp when Michael Gallup was out, CeeDee Lamb still trying to grow into that number 1 role. But we were talking about, it's like Dennis Houston, Noah Brown, like the talent differential here is massive. And even somebody like Jalen Scott, I heard our guy Michael Gelkin talking about him today. He even asked Mike McCarthy about Jalen Scott, made a bunch of nice catches in the drills today at practice. They just have a lot more depth at that position than they had at this time last year.
Yeah, and that's really, I'm trying to find a name on here real quick that I noticed as well. But yeah, I think that's one thing that they've really improved is because they were able to kind of improve the middle class. Jalen Brooks, that was the name. That's who you were talking about.
Yeah, Jalen Brooks,
83. Yeah, I think that was it, because they improved the kind of upper middle class of their wide receiver room. That it pushed a lot of the talent down. So you're not seeing Drummond running with the second team.
Drummond,
he's only with like the third team. So, but that's really helped. That's because I think it's helped with the competition. They also had this other kid that was really good. I noticed the Western Florida kid, David
Durden.
David Durden. Yeah, I noticed him a couple different times too. So yeah, I mean it's crazy. I mean, I think they always have had good depth in these training camps because they bring in a lot of good free agent wide receivers. But I think that what you're noticing now is that they've got a really solid core of 5 wide receivers at the top, and then still after that another 3 or 4 guys that you're interested in and that are out there making plays, despite the fact the packs have already come on.
All right, so we just got done talking about the wide receivers. Let's talk about the positions that we are really excited about today: the offensive line, the defensive line, because this is what we've been waiting for all year, is the trench play, right? And now we finally get that. Later, let's dive into the offensive line and the defensive line next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll lay in $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That is $200 that you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I use FanDuel for all of my NFL and college football bets. It's absolutely fantastic. But there's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel as well. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers. On tomorrow's show, we're going to do 2 shows again tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about a certain suspension for a Dallas Cowboys running back that might have an impact on the running back room. So make sure you tune in then. But I want to talk about Mazi Smith, the Cowboys' first-round pick. First time in pads. What were your initial impressions?
He looks like he's still working through it. He is incredibly strong. I saw a couple of really great reps between him and Tyler Smith, and I think I shared some video with you and a couple other folks. But there was a couple of different reps inside. First of all, let me just throw out Tyler Smith looks fantastic at guard. I just wanted to throw that out because he
not
surprising. He is very strong. And actually one of the more interesting reps that I saw was him putting Mazi Smith in an uncomfortable physical position, back on his heels, got into his body quick, and then Mazi was kind of almost on one foot, but Mazi was able. Yeah, we've got the stance tapes. Don't worry, John. And that's not even the John that's been bugging me about him. Let's get back to this one rep. Mazi gets off onto basically 1 foot, kind of hopping around while Tyler's pushing him, and then is able to get his foot planted, readjust, and I showed you the footage. He threw Tyler Smith to the ground. Like, he recovered from being off his back foot, 1 foot, got his second foot down, got his hands in place, and then he threw Tyler Smith to the ground.
Yeah.
It was it was crazy to watch that kind of strength. And that's what you saw a lot of. There weren't a ton of reps. He worked mostly with the second team. I watched him all throughout his kind of warm up stuff, working against the pads and everything. I was able to get a little bit of video and give it to John for stance, not that John, but John Owning for stance examination. I'm sure you guys will hear about that sooner than later. I think we'll get a lot more of that tomorrow because they're going to be practicing on the near field where we'll be able to get a little bit closer look. But for the most part, he looked like a guy who physically, absolutely belongs, but is still kind of working through the technique things that give guys like Tyler Smith and other professional guards the advantage over him right now, as he's still kind of learning how to handle that kind of attack.
His strength alone this year is going to make him productive. Like, I've got no doubt about that. It's just how his ceiling is going to be dependent on the technique and getting off the snap a little bit quicker. But I've got no doubts that he's going to be able to contribute at the very least in short yardage, goal line, all that kind of stuff as a rookie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He, like I said, he's a handful. And there was another rep too, I think that was out there that I didn't get a good look at initially, but I think that Machota put out there that where Tyler Smith gets him on a reach block, and then he recovers so well and is able to just kind of shrug, not Tyler Smith, Tyron Smith, that got him on a reach block, and he was able to recover and get off of that. The fact of the matter is that, the lack of technique is why he's getting reach blocked. The lack of technique is why Tyler Smith's pushing him onto 1 foot in the air. It's pure power and strength that he is able to do something about it. The fact that he's able to get into those positions and recover and actually make the plays, that bodes well for once he actually knows more what he's doing, that he's really, really going to be special.
I expect him to look dramatically better by the end of what I think we have 10 padded practices. By the time we get to the end of that 10th padded practice, I think you're going to see a significantly improved player. But I'm excited that we at least get to see him in pads finally today. Yeah. We should talk about one of the other pass rushers on this team that was absolutely dominant on Monday. And actually, we previewed this, discussed it on our previous show today. Micah Parsons has a chance to ruin practice every single day. He definitely did that today.
Yeah. He was all over the place in the pass rush drills. He was just harassing Dak and whoever he was going against. There was a run play at some points. I don't think I saw who it was. I think it was Malik Davis that got the ball, where it was a toss play.
Yes, it was Davis.
And I thought when I saw it happen, I honest to God, thought that Parsons was going to catch the toss and just take it the other way.
Well, Michael Gallup was supposed to chip him, and he beat Michael Gallup on the chip, and he beat Tyron Smith to the spot and made the tackle.
To Gallup's credit, I don't know that he's ever had to get close to someone that close to someone doing their work like that, and then realizing, I need to react a lot quicker if I'm going to try to chip Parsons inside. He basically got in there so fast that he almost could have received the pitch and tossed it for a loss. There was at least 2 or 3 other pass plays where, Dak continued the pass play again, like we've talked about before, but he would have easily been sacked. Lawrence had another play or two where Parsons pushed him into Lawrence, and so the pass rush is fully in play and enacted. Another guy who I wanted to mention, we can talk about Sam Williams in a sec. The other thing I wanted to mention was Fajoku. I saw a couple different snaps from him playing outside and inside where I felt like he was able to get through and make some, cause some chaos. I don't know if he actually got a sack, but there was definitely one play on those runs series where he made a tackle for a loss for it felt like. So, and he did appear to be working with both the defensive ends and the defensive tackles. Sam Williams. So I saw, and I honestly has, I'm at practice.
I got a Michael Galkin update. He said he has a shoulder injury. The Cowboys are somewhat optimistic on the severity of it, but they're going to be doing more testing.
Okay, I got to ask again because this may not be announced yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it came out. Has anything been said yet about Wanye Thomas? injury-wise?
Not see anything.
Okay, so I saw him make a tackle and then hold his arm like that. But he kept playing and he kept going. So maybe it popped in and out or something, or a stinger. But he definitely looked like it was a situation where he was trying to make a tackle and then afterwards he immediately grabbed the arm.
He's probably one of those guys that can't afford to have an injury, right? Exactly. And that's probably I think you're going to see Wanye Thomas and Sam Williams be treated a little bit differently from the medical staff in the sense that they're going to be very careful with Sam Williams. Even if it's nothing serious, he might be held out 2 weeks just to make sure he's ready to go. Wanye, he's got to make the team.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just throw in about Sam Williams. I saw Sam leave the field, but I didn't know what was wrong, and he wasn't limping or anything, so I knew it wasn't any kind of lower body thing. He did, just to kind of point to that, like he did stop on the way to leave the field and talk to somebody for a little while. So it wasn't like, my arm's broken. I can't, so
right.
We'll see how it is. I will also mention that I saw McComu on the cords today. He was not on the cords on Saturday.
Dorrance Armstrong was on the cords. I saw
Dorrance Armstrong was also on the cords today. That was something must have happened Saturday or something because he came out without pads on. Lewis is still on the cords. He's moving very well. What's his name? Schoonamaker is on the court still, and somebody else that was sitting next to me who is gone to a lot of these practices as well mentioned, he looks really good, like moving really well.
I think it's a pain tolerance thing for
that. Probably that's what I'm thinking too.
It's with the plantar fasciitis, right? Like I think they're just trying to manage partial tear, manage the pain. And we'll see how it goes. Landon, I want to empty your notebook because you've got a lot of really good notes from practice. We're going to get to more of Landon's notes out from Oxnard next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Again, we are live on YouTube right now, so please send your questions in if you would like Landon and I to answer them. But Landon, what other notes do you have out from the first padded practice for the Dallas Cowboys?
A couple of different people asked me about Hunter Lupke. I have not noticed him at all. Like I haven't seen him physically. I mean, he's out there. I'm assuming we would have heard otherwise, but I haven't necessarily noticed him in lining up at fullback. I will point out, just as a note, it does seem that Sean McEwen is taking exclusively all the fullback reps that I've seen,
and that's not surprising. He did that a lot last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So you saw him out there doing a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of Lupke. We'll obviously talk about Ronald Jones a little bit more tomorrow, but even before that, like it's pretty clear that he's not. I don't know.
I don't think they have him penciled in for the number 2 role or anything like that.
No, they're clearly giving the lion's share of those carries when Pollard's not in to Malik Davis and to Rico Dowdle. Those are the guys that, and from what I understand this morning, Dowdle was mentioned, both of them, but Dowdle specifically was mentioned by Mike McCarthy in the press conference this morning. And we've seen a lot of him. He looks like the Rico Dowdle we're used to, quick, strong. So I think he's definitely going to be a part of the mix.
I'll just say really quickly, I saw a lot of people today talking about, hey, the Cowboys need to go out and sign a veteran running back right now with Ronald Jones suspension. I don't get that sense at all.
I don't think you mentioned it, like, and we'll talk about it obviously more tomorrow. But like, how does it affect the Cowboys? How does this suspension affect the Cowboys running back room? I don't know that it does.
I almost wonder if the Cowboys are like, darn, our running back is suspended. Now we can stash him on the suspended list for 2 weeks and still have his rights in case we need him by week 3 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it probably helps the Cowboys situation because I don't think that they wanted to necessarily give him carries starting week 1 if everyone else is healthy. So, I tend to agree that it honestly, I don't think it changes much of anything. If the Cowboys were going to go out and get another running back before the end of training camp, the status of Ronald Jones, I think, had little to do with that. Nothing. So he's not like necessarily in the plans just because he's a running back that people have heard of.
I do want to ask you about Deuce Vaughn. I did see you mentioned Hunter Lupke, NFL Network was doing a little thing at practice today talking about Deuce Vaughn, getting him involved. But Deuce Vaughn was like standing in front of Hunter Lepke, so you couldn't see him at all, but they were trying to get a camera shot of him. It was really, really funny. You just had to be there.
It's a good, it's really good, kind of idea of exactly what their plan for is on the football field, right? Is to hide him behind the larger players so no one can get a good shot of him.
I just wanted your thoughts on him. I know Mark McCarthy said in today's press conference that they want to get him more involved in the offense. What did you see?
Well, I mean, I have to tell you that I was on the opposite field from where the 9 and 7 and 7 and 7 practices are. I literally couldn't see him. It was like he was too far away. It was too small. And so I honestly, there was 2 or 3 different times when I was in the stands and there was a handoff and they're like, "Oh, that's Deuce Vaughn," and I'm like, "No, that's not Deuce Vaughn. That's Malik Davis." And I literally just never got a shot of him because he's too small. So hey, if anything, that just shows you how effective he's going to be on the field. No one's gonna be able to see him.
I got another question here from John. He wants to know how have Osa and Chauncey Golston looked so far.
Osa had at least 2 or 3 really good reps that I saw today. One during the run period where he knifed through and was able to make a tackle for a loss. Golston looks really good. One of the things that they were doing early on was working on splitting double teams in the defensive tackle. Most of my focus before they started doing the 9 and 7 and 7 and 7 stuff, and eventually 11-11, was to watch what was going on with the defensive tackles because I really wanted to see Mazi. I really wanted to see some of these guys. And so I was watching Golston and Osa and the rest of the defensive tackles work on splitting double teams. And Golston just looks so smooth doing that. I mean, his length is really useful in shedding blocks, and then he better than obviously a lot of these other defensive tackles, especially the nose tackles. Yeah. He gets skinny through the hole so well that he can penetrate in a way that you just don't see a lot of defensive tackles because they're not as svelte as he is.
Physically, how did he look? Does he look more like a defensive tackle now than an edge guy?
He looks. I mean, I thought that he was starting to look more like a defensive tackle at the end of last year anyways, and I think he looks like that. He definitely has a different body style than the other defensive tackles, even Osa, right?
Because he's long. He's one of the longer ones they have.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely closer to the David Irving type defensive tackle. Not that he is even that kind of athlete or anything, but he's closer to that body type than anybody else in the defensive line room. Save maybe when you see Fahoku kind of slip in there a little bit.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to compare him.
Longer, taller.
Does he look like Tyron Crawford when Crawford was playing inside a defensive tackle?
No, I think he looks, because Crawford was like, enormously like in the upper body. It felt like specifically. This guy, he's more lean and lanky, and it's all kind of length and technique with him. It's not because even when Crawford would come down inside, like it was violence, right? It was still that his game was built on violence. I think Golston, it's more of a gliding, kind of trying to get through the line, trying to use his wingspan to stop you, trying to get off blocks.
He's going to try to avoid blocks, probably. Like that's probably
exactly. Right? Use his quickness. He's quicker than Crawford is, I think, in some way. I mean, no, that's hard to say. Crawford was really quick off the line, but I think because he has longer legs, like his stride is able, like by the second step, he's in the backfield. Yeah. So it's that kind of movement.
All right. Well, hey, we're wrapping up your notebook here. Any final thoughts on the first padded practice? From what I could see, again, NFL Network did a fantastic job of broadcasting, so I got to see it a lot. Seemed like it was a pretty competitive practice for you being your first one.
Yeah, there was a fight at one point, not a brawl, but like a heated exchange. Like I said, there was hooping and hollering. Like the coaches were fired up, the people were really fired up to get the pads on and get hitting. I will add in. Because we haven't mentioned his name, and there were a couple of things that I thought were interesting with him is Kavonte Turpin. Turpin had a fantastic diving catch out en route, and just looks a lot more comfortable in general as a wide receiver. I will throw out there that you mentioned that they were doing a little bit more zone read stuff, or at least they were showing that in NFL Network. One of the run plays that they did, where they had Pollard on the field, they brought Turpin in motion across the formation, and then did like an orbital motion, which is, if you're not aware, is like looping back around the quarterback while he's in shotgun and starting to go back out the other way from behind. So basically what it meant was you had Pollard going across Dak's face, doing a read option this way, and then it was like a triple option almost, where he was getting an option going this way, and then he could also pull it to go do a speed option with Turpin out in the flat. I'm assuming there was also a pass option on the back end as well. So some interesting stuff that they're really trying to work Turpin into to get some different looks, to find some ways to make him useful. I love the idea of getting a speed option with Turpin and just moving him in motion and that sort of thing. I think that really is going to help take advantage of what he does best.
To me, it's clear that the Cowboys had this idea this offseason that we got to be faster in offense. Going out and getting Brandin Cooks helps. But if you can also find ways to get Kevontae Turpin on the field at the same time, it's just going to make you a little bit more dynamic. Give something for the defenses to plan for every week. I think that's pretty clearly what the Cowboys are going for here.
Yeah, and look, I mean, just think about what offseason could do if you could get Turpin involved in just some gadget plays. You've got more Tony Pollard than you had last year. You've got Deuce Vaughn you're mixing in there. Brandin Cooks, like suddenly you've got all these very dynamic, very speedy guys who can all be getting a lot more snaps and be a lot bigger part of the offense than they were last year. So that's exciting.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Again, I'm going to remind you every day, for the next week, Leigh and I are going to be doing 2 episodes every single day. We'll do a show in the morning like we usually do. We're going to do a show after practice. It's going to be live on YouTube where you can answer or you can ask your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. So again, follow us on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Again, we are free and available on all platforms. We'll see you right back here tomorrow, everybody.